The Illawarra district, its name derived from an Aboriginal word meaning where the mountain meets the sea, a beautiful and industrially vital part of the Australian economy. Small coastal villages nestle between the mountains and the sea in an area renowned for its scenic beauty. Here, the Bulli coal seam, now famous throughout the world, was discovered in 1797. The heart of Illawarra is Wollongong, located about 50 miles south of Sydney and on a Pacific dress circle comprising more than 20 surfing beaches with green mountains, forests and rich dairying and pastoral country beyond. Greater Wollongong has an area of 276 square miles and a population of 160,000. Holidaymakers from the city make this their summer playground. A busy highway links Wollongong with Sydney to the north. Along this road moves much of the commerce of this developing region. "500 industries are now established in the district and a big city has developed to service the needs of the community. Coal is one of the major forces which have contributed to the growth of the Wollongong-Port Kembla area. Population has doubled in the last 10 years. Beyond Mount Kira, the sentinel to the west of Wollongong, the city is surrounded by dormitory suburbs. Six miles further south is Port Kembla, Australia's major steel producer. In spite of its many natural advantages in the form of resources of hard-coking coal, water supplies and access to all forms of transport, Port Kembla itself is a symbol of man's success in transforming an unsuitable environment to meet his own needs. Its focal point is the works of Australian Iron and Steel Proprietary Limited, built on a reclaimed swamp and comprising to date 4 blast furnaces and an extensive flat products division. The output of these works forms a major proportion of the value of Greater Wollongong's industrial output, now exceeding £300 million a year. The presence of the steelworks made good port facilities essential, and a complete harbour has been built under the guidance of the Public Works Department of New South Wales. The new inner harbour has been built on Tom Thumb Lagoon, which first came on the map when it was visited by the famous Australian navigator Matthew Flinders in a small boat named Tom Thumb. Now it includes major port installations, the newest of which is the £5 million coal loading plant built to serve Wollongong's booming overseas and interstate coal export trade. Port Kembla's inner harbour development started on the drawing boards of the Public Works Department, and the progress of the work is on record in the official photographs of Mr. W.A. Moody, Southern District Engineer of the Public Works Department. The pictures take us back to the year 1955, when the inner harbour, as it is now, was a sandy lagoon fronting the seashore. Dredging commenced in June of that year, first to make a channel to the outer harbour with its busy wharves, then working toward the inner harbour. Material reclaimed was placed on the future loader berth site, and a temporary bridge provided access to the reclaimed area. By early 1959, the old Port Kembla road had been cut and a new road put into use behind the inner harbour. Later still, the temporary access bridge to the loader site was removed, and with rock excavation continuing, the harbour entrance was widened and oil pipelines buried in a trench beneath it. While this was going on, coal loading continued from the old No. 1 jetty, and on the outer harbour wharves it was business as usual, with the coming and going of ships carrying supplies for the steel furnaces and taking away finished products. In May 1960, dredging commenced in front of the coal berth, while rock removal from the harbour entrance went on for the rest of the year. November 28, 1960, was official opening day for the man-made inner harbour. A steel industry vessel, Iron Yampy, entered harbour gaily dressed to berth at the new steelworks wharf with a cargo of iron ore to feed the blast furnaces. A year later, clean-up dredging in the inner harbour was still in progress, and the sea wall was under construction. The next big step was the building of the coal loader. Plans provided for rail trucks to be gravitated to the tippler, where coal is dumped onto a conveyor below ground. It then elevates by conveyor belt onto the main storage conveyor above the stockpile area and is discharged onto the appropriate storage heap. Coal is picked up for loading on ship by bucket wheel reclaimer and carried by conveyor belt behind the wharf to the transfer towers, then along the wharf conveyors to the loading gantries. These carry it over the ship, where it is transferred by telescopic chute into the hold. In March 1962, pile driving began for the coal berth wharf. Towards the end of the year, the seawall was complete and work on forming the railway embankment well advanced. A start had been made on decking the loader wharf. Move was railway track laying for the big marshalling yards and construction of the towers for the main stockpile conveyor. In these pictures, the wharf decking is nearing completion and gravelling of the stockpile area begun. By April 1963, the main stockpile conveyor was erected and the road hopper and elevating conveyor installed. The wharf decking was complete and a rail link was being laid to the main line. Then the wharf conveyors were installed and the stockpile area gravelled. Towards the end of 1963, the reclaimers were assembled, the two ship loading gantries erected, and the rail tippler house completed. March 1964 saw coal in the stockpiles and a large bulk carrier being loaded at the wharf. The new shiploader is designed to handle coal at a rate of 2,000 tonnes an hour and coke at a rate of 800 tonnes an hour. Access has been provided for road vehicles as well as rail. After delivery to the receiving hoppers, coke is elevated to the stockpile conveyor and carefully transferred by a spiral lowering chute into a heap with a maximum capacity of 14,000 tonnes. Coke from the Illawarra district is widely used in local industries and in Sydney, as well as being shipped to the world's largest lead smelter at Port Pirie, by rail to a major lead zinc smelter near Newcastle, and by ship to all parts of Australia and overseas. Bucket wheel reclaimers remove coke from the stockpile when required for shipment and put it back on another belt conveyor, which transports it to the vessel being loaded. The conveyor belts are equipped with two-speed drive and operate at the lower speed to suit the fragile nature of the material being handled. A special variable speed belt loading head is provided at the foot of the telescopic chute so that a full column of coke is kept in the chute at all times to minimize coke breakage. Coke is gently spilt off the loading head to rill down the face of the coke stowed in the hold to place it on board in the best possible condition. Fully mechanised collieries supply most of the coal exported through Port Kembla. They're tucked into the mountainside at a distance of 8 to 15 miles north of the coal loader and are directly linked with the South Coast Railway, which carries their coal for shipment. The Coalcliff Colliery, owned by Kembla Coal and Coke Proprietary Limited, and one of the oldest producing mines in Australia. South Clifton, owned by Clutha Development Proprietary Limited, now undergoing major surface modernisation. South Bulli Colliery, owned by the Bellambi Coal Company Limited, where the coal comes down the mountain by conveyor to a washing plant. Corrimal Colliery, owned by Australian Iron and Steel Proprietary Limited, where coal is lowered down the hill in transit cars to the coal preparation plant. On its way to the loader, coal from all these mines passes through Wollongong, and from here a new branch line has been built to service the coal export trade. The line terminates at the shiploader, where there are extensive marshalling yards. The facilities are equipped for the simultaneous handling of coal or coke arriving by rail and road. A large party of visitors from the steel industry of Japan came to Australia for the official opening of the Port Kembla coal loader on June the 19th, 1964. Japanese delegation was led by Mr. T. Tasaka, Executive Vice President of the Fuji Iron and Steel Company Limited, and was representative of all major companies in the Japanese steel industry. The delegation started by inspecting the plant and showed great interest in the methods used to build the loading facility. Mr. Tasaka said that while Australia and Japan were in different hemispheres, they were actually neighbours. He said that the ties between the two countries were rapidly getting closer. 12 years ago, Japan became interested in Australian coal, and since then, Australia had firmly established itself as a supplier second only to the United States. Mr. Tasaka said that Japan formerly could not use big carriers on the coal run because of the limited capacity of the old Port Kembla facilities. And he remarked that Japan had anxiously looked forward to the completion of the new loader, which they now greeted with great joy and delight. At the end of their inspection, members of the delegation saw a portion of a shipment for Japan being loaded through the rail tippler and transferred to the shiploader stockpile. Later in the day, the Japanese visitors were guests at the official opening of the loader by the Premier of New South Wales, Mr. J.B. Renshaw. Executives of the coal and steel industries and various government departments attended the ceremony. Their presence at Port Kembla meant that this was an important occasion, not only for steel and coal, which the inner harbour serves, but also for Australia as a whole. The Premier, Mr. Renshaw, arrives to carry out the official opening ceremony. Were welcomed by Mr. R.A. Johnson, Director of Public Works, who said that close cooperation between the department and the contractors had enabled the work to be successfully completed. Senator Kay Anderson, Federal Minister for Customs and Excise, said that export earnings for coal were expected to be £16 million for the year 1964, rising to £26 million in 1967. Imports of Australian coal by Japan had increased from 390,000 tonnes in 1958 to an estimated 3.5 million tonnes in 1964. Mr. P.N. Ryan, Minister for Public Works, said that the new loader was part of a £10 million program to improve Port Kembla facilities. The government would duplicate the loader if required for future expansion of the trade. Tasaka, Executive Vice President of Fuji Iron and Steel Company Limited, said that he had his own image of the loader while still in Japan, but was impressed by its magnificence and the efforts which had brought the facilities into existence. Mr. Tasaka predicted that provided Port Kembla coal remained competitive in quality and price, its future purchase would continue. He said that the delegation were especially pleased to be in Australia at this time. Mr. J.W. Austin, Chairman of the Coal Export Division of the New South Wales Combined Colliery Proprietors Association, said that rapid handling of coal by rail and through the loader was needed if exports were to increase. The Premier, Mr. Renshaw.
I naturally would not be human if I did not have a sense of pride of being here with you to celebrate the occasion. It only seems a day or two ago since, as Minister for Public Works, I initiated a bill into Parliament for the setting up of the necessary legislative enactments to start this inner harbour. And I'm sure that those visitors from Japan who have been here backwards and forwards over the recent years, particularly those associated with the coal and the steel industry, have seen in this short period a very marked improvement in the industrial strength, in the industrial know-how of the rapid indication of expansion that's taken place in Australia, and of all places in Australia, more particularly in the Wollongong and Port Kembla area. I now have great pleasure in declaring this coal loader officially open.
Squires, Mayor of the city of Greater Wollongong, said that the loader would greatly assist Port Kembla's future growth. The biggest test for the new loader came with the arrival of the Norwegian bulk carrier Ross Cape, which stood offshore waiting to enter the inner harbour as dawn broke over the roofs and hilltops of Wollongong. Harbour, all was in readiness with ample supplies of coal in the stockpile and on rail to load the vessel rapidly. As she approached port through the early morning mist, tugs waited to ease Ross Cape into the loader berth. The ship was the largest vessel to enter Port Kembla Harbour, and its 43,300-ton cargo the biggest dry cargo shipment to leave Australia. It formed part of an order from the Japanese steel industry for heavy coking coal. Ross Cape is turned in the inner harbour swinging basin and eased into the wharf. Soon the big vessel is made fast and in readiness for loading. Telescopic loading chutes move into position above 2 of the ship's 9 hatches, and the loader's heavy machinery swings into action. Then the first coal is on its way along the wharfside belt conveyors. These are 4 feet wide and move at 500 feet a minute, parallel to the wharf. Ross Cape is 712 feet long and 97 feet wide, and the new equipment is capable of loading her full cargo in 2 days. For rapid turnaround of large vessels, advantage is taken of the ability of the plant to load simultaneously from rail and stockpile. The big bogey wagons each contain 54 tons of coal. Inside the tippler, water sprays are installed to keep down dust. Bucket wheel reclaiming machines are used at Port Kembla, loading at a combined rate of 2,000 tonnes an hour. Development work in the inner harbour included a big dredging program for a depth of 38 feet at the berth, as well as stabilising the foreshore. Of 8,385,000 cubic yards of spoil and 673,000 cubic yards of rock was removed from the seabed. The scheme also required the building of new railway branch lines to the loader site. Coal cargo is placed in the hold by high-speed belt trimmers, which are highly manoeuvrable inside the hold and stow the cargo evenly. Of Ross Cape was pleased with the efficiency with which his vessel was loaded by the new equipment. Construction of the Port Kembla coal handling plant is part of a joint federal and state government scheme to smooth the way for increased coal exports from New South Wales. The loading of Ross Cape was national television news.
Good evening, everyone. This is Ralph Fairbrother in Wollongong with today's headlines, Thursday, 19th of March. Coal contracts valued at over £9 million Australian were announced today by the business manager of Kembla Coal and Coke, Harry Gray. Speaking at the reception on board the Ross Cape following the berthing of the huge bulk carrier, Mr. Gray announced that 2 million tonnes of South Coast coal will be sent by his company to Japan during the next 3 years. The contract was negotiated by the company's general manager, Mr. Brian Andrews. The 53,000-tonne Norwegian freighter Ross Cape came alongside the new Port Kembla coal loader at around 8 a.m. This was the start of the biggest dry cargo shipment ever to leave Australia and an auspicious beginning to a new round of contracts which settles the immediate future of the South Coast coal export market. This morning there was no problem in getting the 700-foot-long vessel into her berth. With Captain Hansen on the bridge and 2 tugs assisting, it took less than 2 hours for the Ross Cape to tie up, and within the first hour over 50 tonnes of coal were poured into the forward hatch. Today's record shipment of 43,000 tonnes, which should be completed by late Friday, is being supplied by Kembla Coal and Coke Company to the Japanese steel mills at Kobe. This afternoon, a reception was held on board the ship with company officials and the State Minister of Public Works, Mr. Ryan. At this reception, company officials stated that their new coal contracts were the result of the better and speedier handling facilities being provided by the new £5 million coal loader. A significant occasion for Captain Hansen and Kembla Coal and Coke official Noel Leader. By the end of the week, all 9 hatches will be full, and at the end of the 15-day voyage to Japan, Australia's biggest coal shipment will have arrived.
Ross Cape is fully loaded to a draft of 36 feet 9 inches as the crew prepares for sailing. Built in a Japanese shipyard, she's one of the largest vessels engaged in the international coal trade. Her open hatches ensure rapid coal loading and easy removal of the cargo. Port Kembla's new facilities will enable ships of this type to do their job efficiently. Development of this unpromising site into the state's 3rd port is an achievement for the public authorities and private contractors involved and will benefit the growing steel and coal industries. Last year, Port Kembla handled 7.75 million tonnes of cargo. At her cruising speed of 15 knots, Ross Cape will make the voyage to Japan in 12 days, a new link in the bonds of commerce and friendship uniting Australia and Japan.